Hello. Do you ever wonder what Sundays are all about? I mean, the gathering, the worship, the singing, the reading, the preaching, why we do it. Well, every time I have a Sunday off, I realize a little bit better that it's easy to get so caught up in preparing for Sunday that I lose sight of what Sunday's really about in the first place. Well, Luke records a debate Jesus has with some detractors after he healed a woman on the Sabbath. Now, there are, as you may know, two traditions concerning the Sabbath. One, recorded in Exodus 20, links the Sabbath to the first creation account in Genesis, where God rests after 6 days of labor. As God rested, so should we and all of our households and even our animals rest. The second tradition in Deuteronomy 5, though, links the Sabbath to the Exodus. That is, it links Sabbath to freedom, to liberty, to release from bondage and deliverance from captivity. And I think it's this tradition that Jesus is tapping into in this exchange. The Sabbath day, whether the Jewish Sabbath on Saturday or the Christian day of rest and worship on Sunday, reminds us, all of us, that we too have been captive and were set free. And therefore it invites us to look around and see who else might still be bound and waiting for release. And from this point of view, our day of worship, while called a Sabbath to the Lord, isn't finally for the Lord, but for us, for all of us who need rest and release, renewal and recreation. Little wonder that Christians move their celebration of Sabbath to Sunday, the day on which the Lord was raised, for this too is release and deliverance, but in an ultimate sense, as we're released from death itself. In healing this woman, Jesus set her free from the torture and imprisonment of her own body. He reached out to this outcast and gave her the wholeness, health, and peace that God always intended people to have. Jesus demonstrated to the crowd watching that keeping the Sabbath holy was not about observing rules and thou shalt nots. Keeping the Sabbath holy was about worshiping God by releasing people from bondage and giving them new lives so that they too can praise God. That's what God had done for the Israelites when he led them out of Egypt. So in a very clear way, by healing the crippled woman on the Sabbath, Jesus is keeping, not breaking, the third commandment. So how do we keep the Sabbath holy today? How do we worship God in the 21st century or post-COVID? The ways we used to keep the Sabbath are long gone. On Sundays now we work, we shop, we play sports or watch them on TV. We do everything that we do on any other day. With our schedules, our desire to spend time with the family, our focus on having as much fun and free time as we can, we struggle with honoring the Sabbath and using the day to worship God. A few of us would want to return to a world full of blue laws and strict rules about how to observe the Sabbath, even if we could. And yes, it's often tempting to join the throngs of people for whom Sunday is no different from any day. Yet the very fact that we do come to worship or view it faithfully online says that we're looking for something more. We're looking for ways to keep the Sabbath holy and to thank and praise God. The word Sabbath literally means to rest, but it seems that God's overriding intention is to keep the day holy, not to keep it inactive. The commandment to rest is a call to deliberately interrupt our weekly work schedule, to take one day and give it to God. It's not a license to zone out and ignore the call of either God or neighbor. So we gather as we're able to tell and to hear the story of God's love for us. Many of you tell it to children, or sing it in an anthem, or tell the person next to you what God has done in your life. We experience that love given to us in the form of bread and wine, which joins us to God and to each other, and to all Christians in every time and every place. We rejoice in God's graciousness and give thanks for these gifts. And we also give money for ministries here and around the globe that bring people freedom from poverty and illness and bondage. We donate food for the hungry and serve it to folks at Fifth Street. We share our time and talents on projects that demonstrate God's care for the world. So Jesus doesn't set aside the Sabbath commandment, but rather offers a different interpretation of it. It must always take second place to mercy, to life, to freedom. Law helps us live our lives better, but grace creates life itself. Law helps us order our world, but grace is what holds the world together. Law pushes us to care for each other, but grace restores us to each other when we failed in the law. Grace invites us simultaneously to value the Sabbath law and see that its deeper intent is the fulfilling of the great commandments of mercy, compassion, and love. So we praise God and we serve our neighbor. We thank God by loving our neighbor. As Jesus taught us, that's how we keep the Sabbath holy, and that's how we worship God. So as we begin a new program year, I hope you'll make Sabbath keeping a part of your family's week. See you soon.